listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God!
Welcome to the House of Asor podcast. I'm your host, William. And today will be Derek.
Hello.
And Sean.
Hello.
And today we'll be discussing The Predator, the new movie from director Shane Black, and the first Predator film since Predators, which was a number of years back.
2010. Yeah.
And then the prior film was the Danny Glover Predator 2, which was in the early 90s.
Alien v Predator does not exist.
Yeah, to me, I think that the Aliens versus Predator films
Alien v Predator.
Or AVP.
No, Alien VP Predator. God dang it.
I think that we will leave those out. So Predator was 1987. Predator 2 was 1990. Predators
but it was set in 97, right?
Yeah, it was futuristic. It was that futuristic, nihilistic LA that's as riddled with crime and Jamaican drug lords.
Predators was 2010. And then The Predator, of course, is 2018.
Do y'all miss the world in which that used to be portrayed that the Jamaican drug lords are going to just destroy America? Because
with their swords.
There was like several Steven Seagal movies, and you had Predator, and then Predator 2, and you had a bunch, not Predator, but Predator 2. You had a bunch of like crime movies that were all like these Jamaican drug lords.
Well, you did
What was up with that?
Wasn't one of the Bad Boys where there was a white guy that was like a Jamaican drug guy?
Probably, but I don't understand.
Or maybe Keanu. Did you guys see the movie Keanu?
Yeah.
Did you watch that? Yeah. Was there a dude in that was supposed to be like a white Jamaican guy?
I'm trying to remember. It's been
I don't
a while.
know. That's a
since
pretty
I saw
good.
that.
That's a pretty good movie.
I just remember there was like a bunch of movies in the 90s, and it was all about Jamaican drug lords. And it's like I guess because obviously I was born in the 90s, so I don't remember any of that because I was a baby. But
well, I
just want to know what in crime or in pop culture made Jamaican drug lords.
I think what happened was without specifically to Jamaican people, I think that it was just so you did have like in the 70s and 80s, you did have a lot of crime in like New York and your big cities, and that's why like you have like the Punisher and Daredevil and all these characters that are in like Hell's Kitchen, all these places, because there was higher crime back then, but over time, the crime stats have gone down. Now some elements have gone up, but in general, most big cities are safer today than they were in the 70s.
Well, like in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, there's a throwaway line that where Jake Peralta's like, "Yeah, New York in the 80s are pretty much just the purge," and it's funny, just like it's probably true.
But like the idea is, I think just a lot of 70s, 80s, and even 90s, they were still building it on this idea of like this hyper violent, crime increasing.
Well, even
scenario.
Escape from L.A. or Escape from New York
was,
that was in the 80s, but that still. Like just
wasn't
kinda,
set that far in the future.
Yeah.
So, but I think just like everybody was just assuming those trends would continue and increase, and then the reality of it is like in New York, a lot of areas that like in these 70s and 80s movies were like junkie warlord areas are now like gentrified, nice condos and apartments with yuppies living there and like brunch places everywhere, but. I think it's just like a lot of that idea of all this crime stuff has shifted over the years.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you had stuff like, even like Lethal Weapon and Die Hard kind of played up on
because
that.
Because a lot of these movies, though, if no crime exists, the movie doesn't exist because then it's just...
Well, I mean, I just love like the entrance to Predator 2 where it's like essentially like a war zone and it's super hot and... Dan Glover is essentially his character from Lethal Weapon, but not really, it just... I like Predator 2.
I've only seen like bits and pieces of that on TV too.
Gary Busey
I meant to watch it before.
It's good. I don't know why people trash all over
it.
Sorry.
Well, it was
anyway, it's not the point.
Yeah, but so we'll be discussing The Predator, and Derek didn't get a chance to watch it, so he's going to be with us through the what we've been watching portion before we jump into The Predator.
We got a movie to discuss.
Because the box office numbers aren't out yet, but it looks like The Predator is going to disappoint the box office and come in with under $30 million. And I think it had a production budget of $90 million, so it needs to do pretty well worldwide for there to be even consideration of a sequel. But
is it who runs Bloody Disgusting? Or who's the editor? Jonathan.
Or is it Brad Miska or is it?
I don't know if it was Brad Miska or Jonathan Bachelor. I don't.
You retweeted it, right?
Yeah, he was saying something they need to make $300 million. I don't know if that counts on
that'd be worldwide
unreported. Like I mean, he's saying they need to make that, so I don't know if that is
like
accounting
marketing
for, marketing and maybe I don't know if reshoots were compiled into the original 90 million budget? I have no
It was
idea.
Brad Miska.
Yeah, Miska.
Who said that the budget was reported at 90 million, so it needs 300 to 350 million worldwide to break even. Because you got to figure, you have the 90 million, they probably spent equal to that on marketing. So then if you're, close to 200 million, box office receipts, theaters get a portion of that. So you need to make a lot more than your budget to be profitable. And with the Predator movies, the original 1987 Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think, is just going to continue to be like the movie that was the right time, the right actor, the right, everything. And the weekend estimate for the Predator right now is at 24 million. Ooh, so not that much.
The Nun did much better than Nun.
So if it's that, let's see. So the Predator series, so Predators made $52 million back in 2010.
For the opening weekend?
Total. Domestic. Predator made $59 million back in 1987. So I think that the Predator will have a hard time matching over 50 mil, or I think it'll have a hard time matching the Predator's 59 million. So if it were to get to 60 million and it was to worldwide get to 300, 350, I think that'd be, at this point, very optimistic that it would, saying it could do that. And then Predator 2 made 30 million back in 1990. So Aliens vs. Predator made 80 million and Aliens vs. Predator Requiem made 41 million. So I think it's not going to be the highest grossing movie in the franchise, which you would think, being released in 2018 with inflation and everything, it should easily be the highest grossing movie of the series. But it looks like that will not be the case, most likely. But but before we go to that, we go through recent news and things we've been watching. There's not a ton of news that has been going on recently.
I feel like there is, but I just haven't been writing stuff down. I feel like there's a lot of stuff.
Well, there's always like small little tidbits of news that come out, because like The Conjuring 3 is supposed to be shooting next year for like a 2020 release or something. So
there's a post-credit scene in Suspiria. Also, before I forget, there's a little post-credit thing in Mandy. Did you watch all the way into Mandy?
No, I did not.
It's just like one little thing. But
let's see. Creep 3 is in the writing stages. So it's like
last night I was wondering, I wonder if Creep 3 is going to be coming out like this October and just dropping.
If Venom is now officially PG-13, which I think is funny because at first it seemed like that film was going to try to compete with the Logans and the Deadpools of the world, which I think would probably be better for them. But when you put in that PG-13 wheelhouse, now you're trying to compete with the Spider-Mans and the MCU, and what we've all seen is that does not happen. So
maybe they're going for the 17-year-old kids.
Well,
I think Venom's awesome.
Well, I think what also happened was Disney's storytelling group that owns Marvel said, we will not let an R-rated character be in a movie with Spider-Man, so it either needs to be PG-13 or you just have to keep it completely separated.
But here's the problem with that.
I know that
instead of making the movie you wanted, you have now kind of ate a little bit of crow or whatever you want, whatever terminology you want to use.
You walked it back from what you said it would be.
You walked it back, and then you're going to do something else to maybe possibly get it in a Spider movie, which in the end run, I'd rather have a solo, standalone, good movie over a subpar movie where you can fit a character into something else.
But to be fair, though, like in this day and age, a lot of times the difference between PG-13 and R isn't that much. If it was simply taking a little bit of blood out and taking out an F-bomb, then who cares?
Well, let me tell you this. If Deadpool continues to make almost $800 million per movie on a budget of less than 100, do you think Disney...
Well, the second one had more than 100.
Okay, but it was like 110. So you're looking at a median of 100 million. If that movie's making 7 to 8 times its budget, which is more than any of the other Marvel movies can even come close to saying.
Yeah, but
would Disney keep
does
that?
Venom need to make like rape jokes and stuff like that? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the adult content I think of Deadpool. Aside from the F-bombs and some of the violence, like really why that movie is rated R is because of
language.
Like the tone of the humor. You know what I mean?
Like the sexual content in the first one.
Like.
But my question is like, you look at like Logan, that was rated R and that was mainly violence.
Yeah.
But again, like if you had a good film that was rated R and you back it to get in PG-13 to have a possibility of maybe connecting to the MCU.
But the thing that
do you want to burn out that?
But
and lose all of it?
People are not high on Venom right now.
No.
So they've got to knock it out of PG-13. You know what I mean? I think based on how it's tracking, they're like, I think they're I'm not saying giving up, but they're like, they need to make some money back on this.
If their analysis said, like, so here's the thing, like, you take aside the movie's content, does it make sense to do all this Venom crap if they're never going to introduce it to Spider-Man? Because to me, like, if you do it,
it only makes sense if they're going to make a lot of money. And
I think, like, you know, the comics in the 90s, Venom was huge and it's still a, you know, fan favorite character. And he did have his own series and stuff, but I always thought that he played best off of like Spider-Man and Carnage. So just having that character in all these own standalone movies, I don't really get the point of that.
Well, but my original point was backtracking all the way to the Deadpool reference. If Deadpool stays as successful as it does, and then Deadpool 3 comes out and it's still making, you know, let's say it breaks $1 billion, because that's possible, and it's still rated R, and it's still in a budget of $100 million. Do you think Disney will eventually, because they're going to eventually own Fox, Deadpool will make his way into an Avengers movie? There's no way it's not going to. With that big of a cash cow, he will make it, even though he's already.
I think they do know, though, that might dilute the character for his own increase.
But you could even have him as just, it doesn't really matter his role, but I think regardless, if you have a character that's making $100 or $1 billion,
I don't think they need it, because they have all these characters, all these movies going. They've got a good thing going for it. That's a universe-breaking character on some regards. Like, I don't think it's worth it. Like, the reward is so small, and the Deadpool fan base is sometimes it doesn't need to get drawn in. I think, you know what I mean. I think it's fine just existing on its own.
I'm fine with that.
And Deadpool's a comedy. Yeah, I know Guardians of the Galaxy is too, but Deadpool's more of a comedy.
And Deadpool doesn't take anything serious enough that you can just mishmash the continuity however you want.
But I'm saying again, this world is about money, not what works.
I'm just saying I don't.
That could hurt them though.
I'm just saying I think
with the way that Guardians of the Galaxy is falling apart, because it's in hiatus and probably will never get made. So you lost Guardians of the Galaxy for now. There's something else that's in limbo too with them. They've had a couple of their big marquee like movies that are going on that are just falling apart. So you look at that and it's like, so what are you going to do now? That's where a character like Deadpool, you could pull him in, have something. The only reason I say that is because it's money. If he wasn't making money, it's different.
Well, here's the thing. I don't want to spend 30 minutes on comic books again.
No. I would think, like, for me, I would think, okay, maybe we do one more Deadpool movie, but this isn't going to, I feel like the shtick isn't going to last 6 movies. So I don't think there's any.
It's a trilogy.
I don't think there's any need for them to kind of bring in.
He said that the next Deadpool might not be Deadpool 3, just like X-Force. So
yeah, because I think
that would be the last.
And two, like, and you. Like on Marvel, like the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff, that's just because the director. I mean, we'll see if they make it, but I
don't think so. But anyway, with Venom, I'm disappointed to see it.
None of the stuff about it's looked that great to me, and backing it down to PG-13 seems like they're kind of walking back what they promised.
Yep.
Now, if the movie turns out to be okay, I mean, I guess too, their ultimate thought is, let's say the movie doesn't do that well, but the character is somewhat well received. We can then just slap him into a future Spider-Man sequel, and it's not lost money.
Because you have Tom Hardy, so you're starting from a good spot. Wait, does that come out this fall?
Yeah, this fall. It comes out in October. Let's see. So other brief news, the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is coming to Netflix.
I'm kind of excited.
That trailer looked good.
Yeah, so it looks...
this is not Melissa Joan Hart's Sabrina.
Still, and like her, I don't know how they did it, but it looks like Archie Comics Sabrina come to life. Like her makeup and everything looks so perfect.
Which is funny because I did not even realize until a while back to one of the podcasts that Sabrina was an Archie Comics character. Because this is not Melissa Joan Hart's version. I wonder if she's going to have some type of cameo in it. I would imagine they'd have to have her as like just even as a teacher or just something in the background just to have a reference. Because that was a big part
of the satanic ritual.
Think about like especially us growing up, like Melissa Joan Hart was a huge pop culture icon for
a bunch of 90s, stuff. Clarissa Explains It All, a bunch of stuff. Let's see other brief news. Derek Mears is going to be Swamp Thing in the James Wan produced Swamp Thing series. That's supposed to be like a rated R series. So that will be interesting to see how that turns out. It's going to be that streaming service, I think. So don't know if I'll get that. But if the show turns out to be good enough, then I would look into it. The Nuns made a bunch of money. It debuted with over like $50 million. I think it dropped pretty significantly week to week. But
it's pretty. You're looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score. Not only was it poorly received by critics, it was also poorly received by the audience. So
yeah, I've heard a lot. Like none of us saw it yet. And
no, I'll wait till it comes out to rent.
I was going to use MoviePass, but MoviePass never worked for anything because they made all their changes. They did offer to let me get my to get a prorated refund for the remaining of my account because I didn't open it until February on like the yearly plan. And I did that and I got back like $60. So I got to see 15 movies for what breaks down to $30. So that was a good deal. But in the future, I was so tired of not being able to just buy the tickets in advance for big movies.
Yeah, you gotta be able to do that.
And all that stuff, and not being able to see anything when I wanted to, because I tried to see Mission Impossible Fallout, and it just never, ever was on there. So I just said, screw it, and paid to see it on a big IMAX screen or the big XD theater. But so I guess now I can move into...
Well, also, real quick, the Halloween Horror Nights, is that at Universal? Right?
Yes.
Did you see this year they have Trick or Treat and I think Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
Oh, yeah, I saw the
two of
Killer Clown.
which was very awesome. Like I was talking to my wife, I was like, that would be so awesome just to live around there.
What
It's
are
like,
you going to
let's
do
just-
with those pies?
Yeah. We just need to make a trip one day out there.
Like I was in Orlando in October one year and didn't get to go. I was so mad. But
And two Scarefest going on this weekend. Joe Bob Briggs is there.
yeah.
And, bunch of people we know. And for some reason that it just like slipped by. Like I had something. I don't know. I had something. Oh, I had to shoot yesterday. So
Yeah. We shot a short film Friday night,
yeah.
which was the 14th.
Well, next year I want to ramp back up and try to start going to more. Now that my daughter's like 1, she just turned 1.
Now you can put her to work.
Now I can be like, okay, just sitting here for like 2 hours. No, but I think we're getting in the swing of things and it's a little bit easier. So even if I just go by myself, or she can go, with my wife. And
horror conventions and conventions in general, like I'm not the hugest fan of, because I don't really like to buy most merch they have there. I don't care about all the dismembered skeletal toys, and I don't really care about autographs and stuff. I just like the ones that have been local where people we knew were there.
Yeah, that's why I think it's good to
I like
to
the
net-
panels and film
to network and talk to people, and that's what Scarefest has. Plenty of people we know.
Last
just
time I
because
went
it's so
to
close.
one of the fests, I got a really bad sinus infection, so I just never gonna go to one again.
But yeah, so now we can move into discussing the things we've been watching. So I didn't get a chance to, but both of you watched Mandy, the new Nicolas Cage movie. And was it as crazy as everyone has said it is?
Here's the thing. I think people played it up as being this insane movie. And, I mean, to me, it was a very different movie. It was... I mean, I loved every single thing about it, but it's kind of like... The way I felt about it was almost like Drive meets a revenge, movie. Which Drive, in a way, was a revenge movie. But this has the ambiance and the aesthetic of Drive, I feel like, because the music was there. It was a very synth-heavy score. This was a 80s throwback movie with a guy that understood. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think his dad even directed a lot of movies in the 80s and stuff.
I'm not for sure. Panos,
I think his dad.
I know
was
I'm
a
going to butcher
director.
it, but Cosmatos possibly. But he did Beyond the Black Rainbow, which I'd always meant to watch and just never got around.
So looking at just the promotional materials, it looks like so if you were to just look at just the promotional materials, you would think that Mandy and The Void were in the same realm.
Now I will say this was 1,000 times the movie The Void was, because I actually enjoyed it. No, The Void was bad. Because The Void had cool aesthetics as far as creature design, but as far as anything else, it's pretty empty. Now look, I am partial. I love Nicolas Cage, but this is a movie that I was hyped up to see, and a lot of times when you're all hyped up to see something, it usually
disappoints.
It was different than what I thought it was going to be. This is over a 2 hour long movie, so there's some stuff they could cut out, but to me, every single thing worked on it, because you have a Charles Manson type cult in the movie, and they picked the perfect guy because he just despicable, creepy, weird. Everybody. It just worked. The aesthetic, the colors, the music, because it's kind of like a weird synth-heavy score that also has metal music intertwined, but it all works.
So yeah, it was what is his name? John. I'm probably mispronouncing that too. John Johansson, I think. He passed away, but he was also Johansson. He was a composer on Sicario, which is one of the best scores. And Prisoners, Arrival. But yeah, the music in this is good. My wife pointed out too, and I think I kind of agree, it reminds me more of It Follows in tone than Drive, the colors of Drive. And yeah, it's 80s, but also too, It Follows was set in the 80s. This is set in 83. But it also is very much, it also reminded me of, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on it. I did a review for The Visitor.
Yeah.
I don't know, you guys, I know you haven't seen that, but that's very much about some weird cult from outer space. I don't know. It's that movie is a mess. This film is not a mess at all, but just how out there and the different elements that it kind of pulls in when also being very genre heavy, you know?
I love it. Look, I'm trying not to be a spoiler, but there is a definite like Hellraiser aspect to this movie too, which I did not see at all.
Which The Void had in it.
Yeah, but this did even better than that because this felt like Hellraiser. Like there was
I was debating on whether to say that, but Hellraiser and some Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 and 2,
because there's some stuff in it that is just like straight out of the scene in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 or their disc hopper.
Say
I can't say it.
I haven't seen it yet. Don't spoil anything.
I'm not spoiling anything. It just
don't spoil anything.
So I wasn't paying attention to what you're saying.
No, it just if you
So
like.
Don't say anything. Don't look at the poster too closely.
Yeah, that's so good.
Because this
I
film
wonder
takes
what you think about it. Did you like it?
Okay, so yes, I liked it. I bought it. I went ahead and bought it because you said, "Oh yeah." And,
I'm buying it when it comes out for Blu-ray.
I just bought the digital copy because
I'll probably buy it with digital.
just because it was like $6 or $7 to rent. I was like, well, I'll just pay
I read it
this.
on Amazon for like $4 or $5 or something.
Or SD or HD?
HD.
Oh, So anyway, yeah, I bought it for like $13 or $14. Yes, I enjoyed it, but also too, there's so much going on in this film.
It's hard to digest.
Yeah, and then I was like, also it was like
There's some stuff that makes
11,
no sense.
11 o'clock at night when I was very tired watching it. And not saying I disliked it because of that, but I definitely need to watch this again soon because there's a lot going on and I want to appreciate everything that this film has.
There's
on some regards, it's straightforward.
Yes.
On some regards, it's very straightforward, but also too, obviously, there is a lot kind of to think about and uncover here as well.
Yeah.
But it definitely, and I'm not saying it doesn't get going, but it has two different paces.
Yeah.
And to the film, and one is the first hour probably, and the other is the second hour. So you get to look forward to that second hour, even if you're kind of like waiting for some more inciting action to happen sooner, maybe in the first part. But also, it's a beautiful film to look at. The dialogue.
That's what surprised me about this movie.
Yeah.
I did not expect such a visceral experience as far as like the colors and the scenery and just like I was expecting a schlocky, mom and dad type because I did not like that very much. So I was expecting something on that level that was just going to be like Nicolas Cage on the screen just acting ridiculous the entire time. And this wasn't that. I mean, there is some crazy stuff in the movie, but it's not. This is like you're not going to get Nicolas Cage in what's where he's the movie where he fights crime and he gets I can't think of Kick-Ass. He doesn't really hit that level of insanity, but this is still like this is good Nicolas Cage. This isn't like
properly utilized.
This is properly utilized Nicolas Cage. The one reason why it reminded me of Drive as well is he has very few lines in this movie. He maybe says like 10 lines.
Well, I'd read this interview with Nicolas Cage recently. I forget which publication it was with, but he was talking about a lot of his movies recently. He's kind of given up on doing naturalistic acting. Just to kind of replicate like real, real down to earth, just replicating.
Is that the where he's talking about the kabuki? Japanese kabuki?
Yeah, and he was saying that like on the movie Joe that he did with was it David Gordon Green?
I believe so. Yeah.
So that movie is one where he did like naturalistic acting. He did get some accolades for that, and the movie did get some discussion around it being really positive. I haven't seen it yet, but I need to check it out.
I'll like to check it out.
But he was saying that the video on demand platforms have been very good to him because that's where people are making the movies that studios won't do, and he just brings an appropriate level of intensity to it. Mm-hmm. And, it's kind of like the Saturday matinee stuff that back when he was like a kid that you go watch the movies on Saturday on TV. Now it's video on demand, so people can rent it on iTunes or wherever or Netflix. So he's making these movies and not really holding anything back and just trying to make them, give it his all and just trying not to do these naturalistic, nuanced performances for these kind of more genre projects. So like for Mom and Dad, regardless what you thought of the movie, like if he had just played that, calm, cool, collected, gave a standard performance, people probably wouldn't have talked about it.
Yeah.
So with
he's given us something memorable. I think it was an IndieWire too, because I read that same one.
Yeah.
He talked about even Vampire's Kiss. He was like Max von Schneck, I believe, who played Nosferatu.
Yeah.
He said he was channeling him. That's why he was kind of so off kilter in that film.
We need to watch the movie that has Willem Dafoe, where he's the actual Nosferatu.
Yes. Wow. What is that called?
I'm forgetting off the top of my head.
It's very good. It's very funny too. It's like it'd be a good double bill with What We Do in the Shadows as far as vampire comedies. People acting like vampires and stuff like that. That movie's very good. We definitely need to do that soon. But yeah, I mean, Nick Cage he's self-aware on some level and he knows what he's doing and he is you know, he's trying to be theatrical about it. Like, you know, I think he's trying to experiment with his acting.
Yeah, and he's already won an Oscar, so it's like he's not, because a lot of people at this point in their career have not won an Oscar, so then you start seeing them doing Oscar bait movies. He's already done
he
that.
said too in that interview, he said if it wasn't for video on demand, he wouldn't be working probably. You know what I mean? He said this allows me to keep working at my stage of my career. Like he is self-aware, and thankfully he is working a lot too right now.
Yeah, you go look at his filmography and like there's a bunch of crap coming out.
Well, you forget, like, so, you know, you're talking about somebody that won an Oscar, but somebody who was in, you know, like these different movies that got nominations, like City of Angels. I remember being one that people talked about, because that was the one with him and Meg Ryan, wasn't it?
Yeah,
or am I
he's like
that.
Yeah,
and he's like in The Weatherman, but he's also in, you know, The Rock, Con Air, National Treasure 1 and 2, so big like studio blockbusters, in Coen Brothers and Raising Arizona. And David Lynch's Wild at Heart.
Mm-hmm.
So been in these different movies in different eras, you know, made some movies that made a ton of money, movies that got critical acclaim, movies that were with auteur directors that were these kind of out there projects. And then now he just kind of does whatever seems interesting to him and isn't really, like, I still wonder if they'll ever make National Treasure 3, because those movies made enough money you would think they wouldn't leave that on the table. Yeah. And Nicolas Cage, like, it's not like he's been caught doing anything terrible.
No, he just, you know, getting kind of back to the Mandy stuff, like, I just think, again, what surprised me most about this film is that it was deep in a way. Like, I wasn't expecting there to be so much stuff to, like, process. I thought it was going to be straightforward, hour and 30-minute, just murder fest.
So it sounds like this movie delivered on what The Void kind of promised.
Yeah, because
without being the same in every aspect.
You know, but there is, like I said,
but it's also probably a lot more higher budgeted.
Maybe I don't know.
I think The Void was under $1 million.
The Void seemed pretty.
They like fundraiser, like crowdfunding campaigns and stuff. So I think that was probably like a lower 200,000, like under $500,000 budget movie.
And obviously, this is a revenge film. That's not a spoiler. That was thrown out from the very beginning of this movie. I didn't expect this movie to focus on Mandy as much, and there is a lot about her and her character. Not that there's really character development. You get a judge of who she is. There's a lot of elements in that I like. This is not your... I mean, it's kind of your typical revenge movie, but, you know, a movie that I don't know if any of y'all have watched or not is Revenge. It's the movie Revenge that came out this year.
It's on Shudder now, so I'm going to watch that here shortly.
I'm going to kind of compare these two. This is a much better movie than Revenge. Revenge is not bad, but it still falls into all the same tropes as most of the... And I love revenge movies as a genre, but to me, it didn't bring anything new. This was just so weird and off the wall and off kilter.
I'm still trying to process and figure this movie out, because it does seem like it wants you to contemplate it a whole lot.
But is there much to contemplate? You don't know.
But I don't know. Yeah, because, I mean, it goes heavy into the genre stuff. Like, this is definitely just straight up, like...
But I feel like this is a guy who is not... This, to me, when I watch this movie... If you told me this movie was from the 80s, outside of the way that it just looks better than an 80s movie. Like, you could believe it because, like, the music was there, the colors, the clothes, like, just the way everything felt. I think this is from a director who kind of understands that aesthetic. To me, it didn't feel like...
I don't know. It feels like it's like an 80s film filtered through psychedelic drugs.
Yeah,
like,
it is. And
I couldn't tell if sometimes it's like, is this anti-drug? And it's like, maybe not. It's
because there's some stuff that's like, it sucks we're not getting into spoilers. We can't get it. But there's some, it's like, it is anti-drug and then it's not. And then it's a very trippy movie.
Well, and two... So, like, look, I just looked it up real quick. So the estimated budget was $6 million. Yeah. So kind of in that range of enough money to do something crazy, make it look good, but not enough budget. They're going to be constrained too much by the people
they
backing
spent their money well, I think, as far as, like, again, like I was saying, something like Upgrade, which I'm going to be talking about next week. I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
Time travel.
Where what was that, 5 or 6? Was that the same budget range?
Yeah.
They tried to stretch it with their sci-fi or near future sci-fi setting, whereas this gives you... They spent the money in, like, small areas on the screen. I felt like to good effect.
Well, and two, so just to make sure we're not getting an unfair comparison, so the Void crowdfunding campaign raised $82,000. So if that was close to the production budget they used, then
they got a lot out of their money.
And I think Derek's point when you said basically as far as being this kind of psychedelic experience with heavy genre elements.
Yeah.
even if they didn't have that budget, I think the vision would have still turned out better with this, even if it would have had $82,000. Granted, this got me thinking a lot about films too, as far as even just with The Predator, with the lead actor in this and the new Predator film, if you had somebody like The Rock or Benicio del Toro, who was supposedly, cast in it before.
Well, Boyd Holbrook kind of just came across as
I feel like you could also had Josh Brolin in that character, and that would have also probably brought a little bit more to it because he feels in that scene.
So the same with this film. This film was obviously probably set in mind with Nick Cage, and he carried it, and that it was constructed around that. And there are certain films that are constructed around the lead actors.
I do know this. There's one line in the movie, and you know what I'm talking about. It takes place in the basement that he says, one of the few words he said, you are going to love it.
Yeah, I really want to watch this.
Because there's one scene where, you know what I'm talking about, and it's just like, when William sees that, you're going to love it because it is very 2018 and it is incredible. It was just so funny when they did it because
I'm trying to think of the exact lines, but I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I just, there's so much, again, when they brought the Hellraiser aspect to it, I did not see that coming.
You keep spoiling that.
It's not spoiling. It just because if you look at the poster, you don't look at too hard.
Doug Bradley teams up with...
No, it's different than that. But
we can quit talking kind of about it in case we do a full thing, or we can just talk about it more when William watches it.
But I almost think too, if somebody told me that was in that, then I would be more excited for it because it's just this is very different than I even thought.
So basically what it sounds like is just a movie that involves a cult and some revenge aspect and some out there types of visuals,
heavy genre elements.
Yes.
And Nick Cage gives it his all, and it's a movie that
it's not a film that goes 100 miles an hour the whole time.
No, like I said, the first half of this movie, it's a 2-hour movie. There's 2 movies. And you have one about Mandy, and then you got the rest of it. And that's be expected. And it's not boring when it covers that, but it does get into a bunch of there's some books that she reads and references that I don't know about because I don't read those types of books.
A lot of people have said that
I think that those are fictional. Maybe.
A lot of people have said that the mythology behind the movie is really interesting, and they can see that being used for some other stories or something. But so it sounds like it's definitely worth people who are interested in it to check it out. And I've heard about this after the film festival premieres. A lot of people are talking about it and had it on anticipated lists and things that people need to watch. So it's something I'm definitely going to watch. And it sounds like people who listen to our podcast will probably find something in it to dig.
And again, I absolutely liked it. I definitely want to watch it again because it's got me just so curious. But having said that, I'm surprised so many people universally seem to love it.
Yes, because it is a very...
It's got high user scores.
Honestly, I'm surprised even you're so high on it, Derek. I'm not saying that as a negative in the film. It seems like it could be very divisive, but for some reason it's unifying.
Because it's just, for one thing, it's kind of refreshing because like I said, if you listen to the podcast, you know how much I love Nicolas Cage. So it was nice because Mom and Dad was built up and I watched it and it was pretty lackluster. It wasn't what I thought I was going to get out of him. But I go watch this, which again, it wasn't the performance I thought that I was going to get, but it's the one that I kind of wanted. Mm-hmm. And it's okay, I'm happy with this, and again, it did have elements where it felt like Drive to me, and again, I just love Drive so much. It's one of my favorite movies, and they're completely different, but it just kind of, there are almost some film noir aspects to this, very minute, small ones, but just enough that connected me to it, because maybe it's just the synth music. It just kind of gave me the same feeling.
Because when I think of noir, I think of synth.
No, but Drive counts as a film noir, but it had a lot of synth heavy stuff. So in it. I loved everything.
Okay,
about it.
So it sounds like a big recommend.
Absolutely.
So something I'll briefly mention before we go to The Predator and Derek can duck out. So Summer of '84 I watched recently. So that is the follow-up film from the filmmaker group RKSS, which is Roadkill Superstars. So they had made Turbo Kid, the movie that was a big deal a couple years ago that went on Netflix. And it was something that had a crowdfunding campaign behind it. It had Michael Ironside in it.
Did you watch that before? Have you watched Turbo Kid?
Yes, I've seen that.
Yeah, I did too.
So Turbo Kid I'd seen. And Turbo Kid is just kind of what a lot of 80s box art promised but never delivered on movies, because it's kind of a post-apocalyptic Mad Max-esque movie.
BMX movie.
With a kid riding a bicycle with kind of homemade armor type stuff on. Then he finds like a different weapon, and there's like a girl that's a robot, and there's kind of like the gunslinger badass type guy, and
I was not super hot on that movie.
It's a movie that if you look, if the budget was under $100,000, like okay, like that was fun enough. It wasn't anything that was like my favorite of anything. I watched it and I was like, oh, it's enjoyable enough, and there were some elements in it that I enjoyed.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's people that I would like to see what they would do with more resources and things like that. So. Summer of '84 is their follow-up film. They did not write Summer of '84. It was a script that they directed, and it is a movie set in the '80s, of course, in '84, and it has Rich Sumner in it, who is on Mad Men, is Harry Crane. He was on some episodes of The Office. He was on the Wet Hot American Summer series on Netflix. Is one of like the douchey prep school guys. So a guy that's been like a bunch of small things you may have seen in different times, and it's basically just like a group of kids. There's a serial killer that's killing kids between the ages like 12 and 16 in their general area, and then the main kid starts to suspect that his neighbor, who is a cop, is the one that's doing it, and then it's them trying to figure out if he is or not. And so kind of like that Amblin-esque like 80s like kids with flashlights and riding bikes some. So unfortunately for them, I think the script and all that stuff was done in production. The movie's being shot before Stranger Things or It had came out. But it's coming out now after Stranger Things and It have come out, so it seems like
so really before the first Stranger Things season.
I think it was like the script and stuff was in like 2015 or stuff. Yeah. So like it was at least in production before Stranger Things was released. Stranger Things may have been in production and stuff beforehand, but the movie itself wasn't ripping off of the success of those. It was just a similarly themed idea from that era that just happened to have the misfortune of coming out, or maybe the fortune, I don't know, maybe it helps it for these other things to be popular and get more eyeballs on it, even if people say, oh, it's just trying to do what Stranger Things did. But it's definitely lower budgeted because it doesn't have like the sweeping crane shots of downtown, whatever, showing off. Because I think it was shot in Canada and it was trying to be the U.S. So, there's a lot of like interior house shots and neighborhood shots that just don't show a lot.
Where's all the liquor stores
at? So it's one of those things where like they pull off the era like okay enough. They could have easily set this in 2017 and not change much. Instead of going to the library and looking at microfiche of newspapers, it'd be looking on Google, and instead of using walkie-talkies, it'd be cell phones. It doesn't change too much to make it set
present day. Or you could do it like in the mid-2000s, have a walkie-talkie cell phone.
Yeah, Julie and I were talking about that the other day, the Nextel phones, and how mostly construction workers had those. But so the movie, I think if you take away the 80s trappings of it, I think that's what's selling it to a lot of people. Because I will say that the movie, so it has kind of these Amblin-esque era, Stranger Things, It type stuff of the kids trying to figure out something. And then the movie does have an element that goes in a direction you might have not expected. It doesn't go super far, and it's not anything like super shocking. It's not like aliens show up or something, but they have an element where you, from the beginning of the movie, the type of movie you thought you were watching, you didn't necessarily think it would go in the final direction that it went. And I think that's what drew them to make this movie, because it didn't end in the exact same way that all these movies ended in the 80s, like the Goonies and stuff like that. The difference is these are all supposed to be like 14-year-olds or, whatever. So high school versus elementary or middle school. But the movie itself, like, it's, well enough directed. The performances in it are good enough. There's a female character that I didn't buy whatsoever because she just seems like wish fulfillment of the girl that used to babysit the main character, who for some reason is kind of into him when she's like 17, 18 and he's 15 and looks like a young 15, like looks like he's a high. Like, I just don't know how many like attractive, popular high school girls who are seniors who look like it would want to date a freshman boy that looks like a young freshman boy. Like, I just don't know how.
Did
how
you see
possible.
The babysitter?
That's literally what I was about to say. That's what exactly what the.
That which one?
The babysitter.
Okay, the babysitter. I was thinking of Better Watch Out. So Better Watch Out, babysitter. So it's kind of like those types of ideas, but the girl's actually kind of into him or for whatever. Like, but there is some element of like you don't know like what her motivations for it are. So maybe that's some mystery you can get out of it. But I'm not going to spoil what the ending is. Just to me,
spoil it right
no,
now.
I don't want to spoil it. I'm just saying.
William.
So if you're in,
Upload it to YouTube. Didn't somebody do that?
yeah, somebody uploaded the full movie to YouTube, and I report it. It's like, come on, man,
don't do that.
Man.
don't like an indie release movie. I think that they cut the audio out of parts of it, so it doesn't get flagged by the copyright stuff. But still, don't pirate, don't steal. Pay them. It's like $4 to rent. So I overall thought it was better than it was bad. Like it was enjoyable enough, probably like a 6 out of 10 or something. I just thought that, maybe 5.5.
Is it an elevated production from Turbo Kid? Turbo Kid did feel him, and I know Turbo Kid. Some of the the goal of that was to look schlocky on some regards, but
this feels like more of a real movie than Turbo Kid. Cool. But it still feels like it's in that pretty low budget realm,
which it is. So you can't fault them for that. But.
And so it's one of those movies where there's just like a few ways the ending could have gone that would have been much more satisfying and make it more recommendable to everybody. But I think there's been a lot of people who like this movie where they've hated it and Stranger Things because it's the same aesthetic, but with not the mainstream appeal, happier endings. So I think that they like this one because it goes in a little bit different direction. So it's basically like that aesthetic and the throwback stuff without the trappings of mainstream success around it because it's an indie production, smaller budgeted. So I think that's the reason a lot of people have kind of embraced it. I enjoyed it enough. I thought, like, if you're really interested in it and you watch the trailer, watch the trailer. If you like the trailer, then you can check it out on a rental service. I'm not sure if it'll hit, like, streaming anytime soon, is included as Netflix or Amazon Prime. If you want to watch it, you can rent it. I thought it was enjoyable enough. It just, to me, it didn't really go far enough in any direction to make it, like, a must-watch or anything like that. It's just kind of, like, 1980s Amblin type movie, Rear Window type deal of, like, person thinks... someone lives
what's
across...
the Shia LaBeouf one? I was trying to say that as a joke instead of Rear Window.
Suspiria.
Suburbia.
Suburbia.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute.
It's
Disturbia.
Disturbia. And not Suspiria.
Suburbia. There's also a Tony Hawk's Pro Skater level thing called Suburbia.
Yeah, so the
but I like Disturbia, though. I was
going to say, a lot of people have mentioned that.
Yeah.
So
I forget about that movie.
That was a well-done Rear Window-esque movie, I think.
Yeah, it just
that was in his prime.
So Summer of 84 just feels like it's probably shot for under $1 million, which is fine. I mean, I would love to have that budget. I just don't think that they necessarily maximize.
Can we get Shia LaBeouf on the podcast?
Also, what is the vampire film that is also
Fright Night
and the remake?
Yeah.
So this to me feels like
Anton Yelchin.
So like I like when movies are smaller, contained stories that aren't like these huge overarching destined to do this, save the world stories. So I want to see more stuff like this get made. It's just this in and of itself, I didn't feel like it went far enough in anything to really make it like a must watch, must recommend. It was fun enough if you like the aesthetic and era. But it does seem like they struggled to make it look and feel like small town America because it was shot in Canada and the filmmakers are Canadian. So it didn't necessarily ring super true to me about my experience, like in the early 90s and stuff like that. But, it's something that you can give it a watch and see what you think. I think that, it's an interesting evolution from Turbo Kid because it feels more like a real movie. So I'll be interested to see what these filmmakers do with the script that they write or something they have, full control over deciding exactly what it is. With more budget. So hopefully this is a stepping stone to get them like to the bigger project. Because I guess that they just like listening to a podcast, the reason they chose it was because it didn't end in the way that a lot of those movies like The Goonies did. It ended a little bit differently. So that's why they chose it. I think that would be kind of polarizing to people. I think people will kind of either hate it because of the ending or like it. Which is how a lot of these movies tend to go. But I thought it was good enough. Interesting to see where they go with more resources and things like that. It just wasn't to me like a knockout. It wasn't knocking it out of the park. It wasn't something that I think is a must watch for anybody. It's just if you watch the trailer and think it's enjoyable enough, you can give it a watch. It just feels kind of a lot of elements you've seen in other things, not really going in any direction far enough to make it a must watch. But yes, enjoyed it well enough. So that's Summer of 84. Then you all discussed Mandy.
Got a couple of good Canadian filmmaking groups.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The group that did The Editor and did they do?
Wasn't Vestron Video?
Yeah, Vestron Video with people that do like Manborg and stuff.
Yeah, so there's like with these the Summer of 84 and Turbo Kid. Like I'm interested if they would continue doing it. I definitely want them to continue making movies.
Wolf Cop guys.
So there's a lot.
What was the Rutger Hauer
Roger Hauer, Hope with the Shotgun.
Yeah, Hope with the Shotgun. Like the Canadian, they got some good Canadian genre filmmakers up there working on.
I saw where somebody had posted on Twitter or Facebook or somewhere. They said like, in my mind, Hope with the Shotgun and Mandy are in the same universe. Which, if you've seen those, I haven't seen Mandy yet. Hope with the Shotgun, I didn't really love.
That was okay.
But yes,
another thing, Mandy reminds me of a little bit as far as aesthetic and vibe. And just kind of surreal elements at times is Enter the Void.
See, I've heard people compare it to that.
Have they? Okay.
Yeah, I've seen one or two of the people I follow on Twitter had talked about
some people
Enter the
hate
Void.
Enter the Void.
Which at first I thought they were talking about The Void.
No.
And then it's like, oh, okay, no, it's Enter the Void.
No, I was just sitting there when William was talking about Summer of '84, something he said kind of triggered that. Gaspar Noé, who I guess recently...
You did the movie Climax? Is that him?
Yeah, Climax is what's coming. And I want to see that, but I didn't see Love. And then he did Irreversible, which I had that on my queue for a long time. And I need to see that. But Into the Void, definitely a memorable film. Definitely has that same sort of color palette from my memory. And I saw this when it came out. Like I rented it as soon as it came out, which I think it said was like 2007. So that's been a decade.
Which there's just a lot of good purpose
2009
in Mandy.
But Enter the Void, I would recommend checking that out at least once. So,
all right. So at this point, we'll let Derek duck out, and we will get into discussing The Predator. So now we're going to discuss The Predator, the new movie from Shane Black and the latest in the series. And it's one that... Didn't we discuss the box office earlier? Or was that before? Pretty much. And two, we'll do this without spoilers, and we'll have a spoiler section at the end in case you haven't seen it yet and want to check it out, because it's a movie that just came out, and basically, without spoiling what the movie is, the basic premise is that a soldier finds some Predator equipment, and to avoid getting caught with it and have proof that he actually encountered an alien, ships it back to a P.O. box that he has. And since his P.O. box is full, it goes to the house that his estranged wife and child live in. And the Predator is looking for those elements and goes to find it. So him and a ragtag group of other soldiers that were PTSD or different, conditions have to break out and go and try to stop it. So that's your basic premise. And there's like a Predator in suburbia element of Predators in more like residential neighborhoods versus the jungle of the original Predator, or the war-torn kind of hyper-violent criminal organized LA from the second one. So it's kind of taking the Predators out of the environment you've seen them in and saying, here it is in the suburbs, kind of. Not that that's like the entirety of what the movie is, but you get some element of that. And... so that's what directed by Shane Black. So I think people who like Shane Black movies kind of knew what to expect going in. But the trailers, a lot of people hated the trailers for this movie.
The first one wasn't great, and then it got better and better, and I quit watching after a couple.
I know in the comments of some of our podcasts we discussed it, people had talked about how they thought it looked bad. And my thought process was always, so far I've liked all Shane Black's movies, like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Did he go straight from that to Iron Man 3?
Believe so, yeah.
And then The Nice Guys. So you have like those movies, like those are all to me great movies, or at least very enjoyable. And
they're great movies to me, William.
Yeah, well, like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I really liked. I remember being a big fan of that back when it came out, and because that was like Robert Downey Jr.'s kind of resurgence was being in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So that's kind of what got him Iron Man. And then Robert Downey Jr. getting Iron Man is what got Shane Black Iron Man 3. And then, so you have all this stuff. So The Predator, when they said that Fred Dekker and Shane Black, who, wrote like what, Monster Squad and was it Night of the Comet and other stuff in the 80s. So a lot of movies people really love. And, Shane Black was a writer who was in the cast of the original Predator and I think did some punch up for them on the script. So you have all these people that have like, bona fide credentials of making blockbuster movies, or at least Iron Man 3 is a blockbuster movie. Nice Guys didn't make a ton, but still, was popular. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I think was more of like I saw it on HBO a bunch. I bought it on Blu-ray or something, but it was a movie that wasn't super well known and wasn't like a huge box office success, but like had a good reputation and people enjoyed it who watched it. So, you know, they have these credentials that make you think that they are the right team to tackle a Predator movie, or at least to make something interesting out of it. And I'm sure that's what Fox was thinking when they looked at the box office receipts for Iron Man 3 and said, well, we have no idea for what to do with Predator. What should we do? So this Predator, I think, when you go into it, you can expect there to be quippy jokes from characters and kind of like razor-sharp dialogue that cuts back and forth between some of them. You can expect multiple plot lines kind of all going on at the same time and then converging and crossing over. And you can expect things like that. What you're not going to get is the original Predator with, you know, all of the completely jacked, muscle-bound future governors carrying around weapons in the jungle. And you're not going to get that feeling because the original Predator, I think you can put that on today and it stands up. The effects hold up. Everything about it still works today. If you release it today, and if there had never been a Predator movie before and you release it today, I think it would still work. It's just, so this movie is not what the original one is. And it's not like... Again,
about hypermasculinity, too.
Yeah, it's not about... Yeah, I mean, there's not even really any commentary on that.
Yeah, so like this new one, I don't really know what it's... I don't really think it's about anything. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem to be about anything. And it just... This is bad to say, but it's kind of like the lead actor. Like,
Boyd Holbrook.
He's good. No, he's not bad at all, but... he doesn't have like a certain sparkle in your eye that draws you to it. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing else there other than the good performance he is providing, I think.
Well, I think that like, so the role that he was doing, which was military guy who's kind of like a badass, that straightforward about business, blah, blah, blah. Like he plays that.
And he does a great job at it.
But I think that, you know, Arnold was so transcendent in the role.
Yes.
Just because, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger has, you know, over time has proven he can be amazing and be perfect for certain roles. He can be incredibly miscast in others. So I think that like John McTiernan used him perfectly in the original Predator. James Cameron used him perfectly in Terminator 1 and 2. And, you know, those Terminator movies, there's diminishing returns in some of those sequels. But, you know,
Kindergarten Cop perfectly, and honestly, he was perfect for that.
Kindergarten Cop, True Lies, another Cameron movie,
Last Action Hero, Shane Black.
Yeah, so there's
the first draft.
So there's like, you know, so I think that a transcendent character like that. Now, The Rock, if you put The Rock in this movie, here's the thing. So I love The Rock. I think he's I think at this point we're almost a little bit oversaturated because you had like what Skyscraper, Jumanji, Rampage. The Fast and Furious. So you have all these movies in a very short window of time, and that may be overexposing him a little bit. But somebody like him is kind of like the closest to. Well, I mean, I actually think at this point, The Rock is bigger box office money than Schwarzenegger was back in the day. You know, even adjusting for inflation, because the international box office is so much bigger now, and you know, domestically, some of the Schwarzenegger movies may have been bigger, but you know, worldwide gross, there's a lot more money to be made. But I feel like
I would have liked to have had Rock's charisma.
Yeah, I feel like somebody in the lead role that was a little bit more of a defined actor, you know, somebody that you go into and you kind of know what to expect.
Well, they kind of bring more of their self into the role onto the screen. You know, he did a great job in service to that role for what it was. But as far as something like The Predator, where, you know, it is a genre film, so it's fine to kind of go big on all elements, I think.
Yeah.
It doesn't distract from the film. Like, you know, obviously you put Schwarzenegger in some roles, that's going to be distracting.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like having
Mr. Freeze on Batman.
Yeah, having somebody in this that, you know, could bring a lot to it on their own, I think would have helped do some heavy lifting of this film and helped carry it in some places where it faltered.
So, like, just, you know, not to, like I said, what Boyd Holbrook did, what he did was ass and did that well. I'm just wondering if they cast a different actor, if they would have written the role a bit differently. So imagine, so just take his Logan co-star, Hugh Jackman, and throw him in the lead role instead. Does that change the movie dramatically? I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
That's something I'd be interested in seeing too. But I mean, this is like, I think that what happens is all of the supporting cast of characters around the main character, so like Keegan-Michael Key, Tom James, like all that supporting crew, Olivia Munn, they had more interesting dynamics than the lead. And I think on the original Predator, Schwarzenegger was your kind of, you knew he was the core main character. But everyone else is interesting too. And in this movie, the lead character is a little bit less interesting than his, support team.
Yes, yeah.
And then too, so his wife is played by...
if you were in a movie, or if you were in these movies, you would want to hang out with Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
If you were in this movie, he would maybe be one of the last guys you'd want to hang out with.
Well, and two, though, depending on what some of those guys actually did that got him put in, the military prison system.
Well, I'm just saying, as far as having fun on screen.
Yes, in terms of enjoying your time with the characters.
Yes, and some people says some stuff that's maybe not PC. Yeah, regardless of that stuff, personality-wise, some of the personalities are a little bit stronger.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you have a lot of elements about stuff like that. Just the wife character that was played by Yvonne Strahovski, who was in Dexter and Chuck and recently Handmaid's Tale. I think she was kind of wasted. I wonder if there was stuff that was cut out that she was in, because she
kind of just seemed to disappear.
Because she's a strong actress and has action chops too. So I'm surprised they never brought her into any element of it.
Yeah. So production wise on this film, Shane Black went to them, said, "Hey, I want to make Predator a big, summer event again." Well, it's kind of late summer at this point. It's hard to compete against all the actual summer films.
I think they properly placed it.
I do too.
In the months.
I do too, because they would have gotten their lunch eaten.
If it came out in between Deadpool and Avengers.
Yeah.
And stuff.
So, and also too, it had poor test screenings when it screened last year.
And they reshot a lot of the ending.
Yeah, they reshot a lot of the ending.
And they cut so there was subplots that had Edward James Olmos in it, and they cut that entire plot. And of course, we're not going to go too much into it, but there's the entire controversy over the sexual. So the guy that was an actor in the movie that was on the sex offender registry, that was a friend of Shane Black, who supposedly, according to Shane Black, had misled him about the severity of what he did, which is why he gave him another chance and something.
Okay, I didn't read all of that.
He said that he was not told the full extent of it and made it sound, without getting into all that stuff, it sounded like, if you believe Shane Black, his point was somebody that he was friends with that, said that something got taken out of context and it got made to a bigger deal and, kind of downplayed what happened, and he believed what this guy told him is the reason he gave him a chance and didn't bring that to everyone's attention and point it out. And then the reality of what the guy got charged with all the details, seemed far worse than what he was led to believe. Now, is that just covering his ass?
Yes.
Who knows?
For some people, in some situations, I'm all about giving second chances. I'm not a hard ass on people. As far as personal relationship forgiveness.
Yeah.
On some things. I'm not saying for this I would be or anything. I've read some of the details, but I'm not going to repeat them because I don't want to get them wrong. But having said that, this isn't Shane deciding he's going to have this guy cut his grass.
Yeah.
He is putting this guy on set with other people, and he did not do his due diligence to do research for himself, consult the powers that be, and consult his other castmates. This was not a group decision at all.
The only person that was so he was in scenes with Olivia Munn's character, and apparently it was a jogger that was hitting on her being harassing, who then got a comeuppance or something. But then they cut that out of the movie, so it takes away some crucial character development for Olivia Munn's character. Just a little
bit. We don't know what the scene is, but
I'm assuming an establishing
character
moment.
Building, because when she's introduced, she doesn't really say much.
She's introduced, and you're just kind of who is this? And then it's so I think that a lot of times in these Shane Black movies, you don't get a character sitting down explaining who the person is, and you cut to the person. It's more of you get to see them in interaction that gives you background on and watching them interact in this instance, you get an idea of who they are. And I think cutting that out may have hurt that character. She does get stuff to do later on, but it seems like it would have been it seems like something was lacking or missing with her introduction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she did.
So the movie throughout.
But having said that, 200% right decision to cut that out.
Well, and two, the studio rightly said, when Olivia Munn found out, she went to him and it's like, "Hey, did you know that the guy in this scene with me is on the sex offender registry for doing these things?" And then they looked at it and said, "Oh, we didn't. So that's cut." And because, they're the movie's not out yet, and we don't want this to stain us as a studio and stain this franchise and all this stuff, so let's just cut it out. And, Shane Black, I don't think apologized to Olivia Munn personally initially.
Which he should have.
He posted like an apology online. So, once again, all these backstage things affect the movie because the box office, like I said, it's $24 million estimated, which is lower than they expected. So, definitely it's going to end up hurting the gross probably and hurt, leave a stigma over the movie. Watching the movie, I didn't think about that really too much.
I thought about it a lot for the first half. Then I kind of got past it, but
I thought about more in the retrospect once the movie is over.
Yeah, it soured me kind of on it, and like I was watching it. It's hard for me to get to the movies now, but we were doing this for the podcast, so I made sure I made time to go see it. But if we hadn't had this podcast, I would be so soured on it. I would have rather seen just something else and catch this later, just because it diminished my excitement for it so much, and I was just like, I could just wait. There's a lot of good stuff out right now.
Well, and two, like for me, because like the stuff involved like this guy communicating with like a 14-year-old like distant cousin or something. So to me, if they say, oh, this person was a drug dealer and got caught selling pot, it's like whatever.
Yeah, for me, second chances, yes.
Whatever. I mean, Tim Allen is a big star, and he was like dealt drugs in the 80s or something.
Wasn't he a coke mule? I hope this isn't like. Wasn't he a coke mule that turned on everybody and turned them in?
So allegedly, allegedly. Let's just cover our bases here.
Yeah.
Allegedly, he was involved in that stuff and turned on a lot of people he's involved with, and then got a lighter sentence or something. And that was what I learned from a Clickhole video because they had a skit. It was all the drug dealers that he turned on, saying that they appreciate Home Improvement.
Yeah, I think I did see that video.
So,
too.
like, when it's people that get caught, I mean, but then again, you could argue, like, if people are involved in dealing with certain drugs that have connections to drug cartels, people die to get the product there.
Yeah.
But if somebody's, like, growing pot and selling it...
It's sexual assault and harassment now.
That's a different thing altogether.
Especially when you're involving other people. Again, he's not cutting your grass. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a totally different ballgame.
Either doing, like... handiwork on your house or something. Luckily, this guy wasn't in any of the scenes with the kid in the movie, because even though it's like the gender was different, but like regardless, that would have been a terrible look.
Yeah.
To cast somebody, because like in general life, there are people that you probably know that have been accused of stuff or arrested for stuff that you don't know about because they haven't told you, and then when they do tell you, it's like a truncated, best possible version that they could tell you. So it's hard to know how much blame to hold on people, but the bottom line is it did put a cloud over the movie. Regardless of what your thoughts are and what the guy actually did, in today's world with everything going on, you would think everybody would know absolutely better.
Huge cloud over Shane Black for me now, too.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things where that, in and of itself put a cloud over the movie, and I think hurt the movie because they had to cut stuff out. Mm-hmm. And the movie in general, a big problem feels like the editing. They just cut a lot of stuff that hurts comprehension of the plot. Because, a lot of times in movies, you can have a character say, oh, I'm an amazing car thief, and then the character's gone, and then like 2 minutes later, your main characters go outside, and that character's waiting with the car, and you're like, oh, okay. But when stuff like that happens a bunch, and it escalates, then you kind of need to show some of that, because during the movie, I was sitting there like, wait a minute, what? Where'd that come from? What? So I think
there's a lot of conveniences and just stuff that happens, and you just got to kind of go with. And I'm not saying you should, but it just wants you to just go along with it.
Ask a lot.
There's a scene in Molly's Game, which I like that movie, but there's also, I'm like, what is it with these like well-known writers? Just they're going balls to the wall on things happening for convenience sake, and just like, and maybe it's just getting away from they're worried about the literary aspects of it, where it's like, hey, we need to serve this function, don't worry about the reality because this is a story. And I totally get that. That's fine. That's how Molly's Game I think operates on one specific scene that just seems weird. Like, it's so coincidental. You think, is this a dream sequence? Like, so this has some stuff that just happens, and you just got to go with it.
Well, because like if you have no coincidence, the original Star Wars can't happen. I mean, there's a certain element, like in our short films we've worked on, I've been told before, like, I'm thinking too much through a lot of things and shouldn't be so literal about everything. So I think there's a balance there between what would really need to happen for this person to get to this point and what is exciting to show in a movie and expect people to fill in the gaps. And this movie, I think, has a few too many
resting
gaps.
on its laurels a little bit,
And because there's just stuff that, to me, like because some of the Shane Black movies are pretty layered and have these multiple things going on that you just kind of think about.
A lot of setups and payoffs, and this just seems like maybe a lot of stuff was cut and there was some stuff that could have been set ups that weren't paid off,
But then there's
or
other stuff,
something. I don't know.
Like there's Predator ships, and I won't say how many there are, but at points I was like confused, like, well, which ship is this?
Yeah.
How did this get here? What's going on? And there's just stuff like that that's not super clear. And I think to the movie's detriment, they don't do enough of that, just lightly filling in elements.
So I know we talked a lot about around the movie. General thoughts.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it overall?
So if I was going to, like, just to give a perspective, so the original Predator to me is an amazing sci-fi film. I don't know that to me, I think it's as good as like Alien or Aliens, but it's definitely like, in my opinion, like a top 10 sci-fi film, somewhere in the top 10. Not sure where, but it's in there. Predator 2, as a kid, I liked it. As an adult, well, as a kid, I liked it because there's more Predator. There's more Predator, that's cool. And you see more Predators in the movie at the end. But and it kind of built up the mythology of that world with like the alien, the xenomorph skull and stuff. So I enjoyed it, but rewatching it, like, to me, the original Predator stands alone. It's up here. You know, audio listeners, it's up high. It's separate from the rest of them. And then beneath that, you have like, I'm not including the Aliens versus Predator films because those are their own beast. Like, to me, you have Predator 1, and then maybe Predator 2, and then like Predators and the Predator to me are kind of equal, or maybe like, it just feels like to me they're a lesser, like, so the Predator was supposed to be like a big event film out of the Predator, kind of relaunching that, and I don't think to me it did that, because it has like some of the Shane Black-isms, but to me there's just the stuff like the human element, so the government agency or whatever the agency is that deals with Predators, like just the interactions between them and like the soldiers and stuff, I just didn't, to me it felt kind of all kind of slapdash, and
Yes.
and it didn't really mesh well and hang together like the Nice Guys did.
Yeah, I would watch this film again, but my feeling on it almost was kind of like something you would stumble on cable and watch to be like, oh, you know, you may kind of be down on it a little bit or make fun of it in some regards.
Yeah.
And then after it's over, you're like, actually, that was pretty good. And that's about it. You know what I mean? And that was about it, really. Like, I think it's pretty good. I would watch it again. I kind of want to watch it again at some point. They definitely try to build up the mythology, which
works to some extent.
The fandom sometimes loves, sometimes hates, but people love world building. You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
yeah. So they have the element of saying like, here's why more predators have come to Earth in recent decades than in the prior period of time, and they gave some reasoning to that, and then so all that stuff I'm fine with. Like the reason the predators would come here, what they've been doing when they were here, I'm fine with all that.
Some of the stuff feels shoehorned in as far as translating that information. And yeah, the characters, you do feel like, okay, we're building up a team. You know, like it all feels very boxed in what people may want out of a Predator film. And that, I think that's probably a hard thing to balance. Like, it makes me feel like, is the Predator limited? I feel like if you take the Predator out of the limits of kind of what you expect, that it no longer becomes a Predator film. And some people are already like, there's too much humor in this film just from the trailers.
Yeah.
We're like, it's not a Predator movie. Well, if you stick too close to it too,
you just remake Predator 1.
And then, and like, I almost feel like Predator is stretching its limits of what to do with these films anymore. Unless you really blow it out and you turn it not into what you think of as the Predator, which I think if it want to continue, that's what they need to do.
Because the first one's a very straightforward, like, sci-fi horror movie that was very singular in its purpose and laid out a very clear, like, the Predator wants to, it's a big game. So it's essentially those people that you see, like, that are over on safari in Africa where they sit in a SUV and blow up 50 cal sniper rifle at a lion or something. That's essentially what the Predator's doing, because it is vastly outmatching all the people. And it's only that they get, with Dutch in the first one, like an incredibly industrious soldier who's, smarter than average, that's able to kind of bring the fight back to him. And it has those iconic moments, like the Predator jumping in the water and coming out, and Arnold sitting there covered in mud. So there's all these iconic moments. And then the second one, even if it has some goofy elements, like, do you want some candy? There are a lot of things I remember from it. Predators, I don't really remember much from it. And
I don't
this movie,
either, but I remember
don't.
thinking it was fine. It was a fine theater experience, but I never went back to watch it.
So I think the difference, though, is Predators made like $50-something million, and it was a moderately budgeted movie. It didn't The new one costs an estimated $90 million. So it feels like trying to take the Predator bigger is the problem. I think if you keep the budget modest, it can be a profitable enough endeavor. But if you're trying to make it into a big series and you make it, its own Star Wars essentially, or its own Marvel series or something, I think it's pretty thin with intergalactic big game hunters. Unless you start bringing other alien races, then is that too much to ask of the audience?
Yeah.
And Aliens vs. Predator already did that. Because I think that, just the Predator killing humans, we've already seen that. We've seen that. Predators had the Predator dogs and some different types of predators. This movie has some different types of things going on. So that, those aspects I'm fine with. The comedy, I'm fine with. It's just, to me, the story didn't really hang together well enough to make me really care.
Yeah. As far as Predator action goes, I think the Predator action was good. There's some good kills.
I wasn't the
good effects.
So the Predator kills and stuff were fine. It's just I didn't get the motivation of what the Predator was doing, based on what you find out the story to be.
Yeah.
So me, just some of that stuff watching, I was like, why?
And I've heard some people complain heavily about some of the CGI. I didn't really notice a lot, but also
there was some. There was some blood splatters.
Yeah, I also don't have the best vision, but some of the practical stuff looked good though, and people getting cut in half.
So I'll
stuff
say
dripping out. I think that stuff is hey, it's been a while since I've seen this level of carnage on a big screen for me.
I think that the CG in the Predator worked a lot better than the CG in Alien Covenant. Because Alien Covenant, the CG xenomorphs and stuff.
Oh yes, for sure.
So this movie, even though the Alien and Predator series are separate again, they have nothing to do with each other. To me, this was the Predator I liked more than Alien Covenant, but less than Prometheus. But I really like Prometheus, so that's not.
Yeah.
But just I was really excited for this because it was a Shane Black movie before all the controversy stuff came out. The Nice Guys I really liked, Iron Man 3 I really liked, and he does have a story style that I'm fine with. And a lot of people were upset that the Predator was going to be following a story style that wasn't heavily armored men in wood stalked by alien.
Yeah.
And I just don't think you can get much more mileage out of that.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution is. Somebody very smart may be able to figure out what to do with a Predator film, another Predator film one day, because I'm not holding my breath for this, because they talked about this being a trilogy maybe. I'm not holding my breath for that.
It needs China to do huge numbers.
Yeah, so, but there may be a very smart person that figures out what to do with it without going super meta or anything. But for
Bring
me,
Arnold back.
Right now, I feel like it has stretched its limits, and I am fine if there's not a sequel to this. I'm fine with putting the Predator to rest for a very long time.
Well, because I'm fine if because I know with all these Predator sequels, there's always been discussion about Arnold coming back, and he hasn't so far. And I think it's all been clear, and it's been stated plenty of places that Arnold wasn't in this one and turned it down because what he was offered wasn't enough.
So small.
And reading what that would have been, it's that really wasn't worth his time. Shane Black did say if there's a sequel, then Arnold could be the main character of that, or one of the main characters. And like I said, if the international box office, I just don't know if the stink of the PR stuff, regardless of the movie's quality or outcome or box office, is enough that would make Fox leery about going back to it. Even if you get a new director and writer, it feels like a missed opportunity. And Shane Black likes to set his movies during holidays so this movie does have I don't know if this is spoiler or not, a small portion during Halloween, a small portion. And I was
technically,
well, the entire movie would technically take place during that day.
Yeah, but there's a little bit of Halloween vibe during some of it.
So at points oh shit, the Predator just walking around the street and people man, your costume's off.
Yeah.
There was so much potential to really play that up and to maybe even go in some horror directions with it. But so the original Predator is kind of sci-fi horror, I think. It's definitely action, but it's sci-fi horror because there are, horrific elements and characters you care about getting killed.
And them being stalked.
And this movie is far more sci-fi action. There's really no horror whatsoever. There's some gore, and there's some stuff like that. But this is no more horror than John Wick or something.
Yeah.
There is, there's
aside from knowing that somebody could be decapitated at any moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The threat of extreme violence because it's a Predator movie on any character pretty much, is at least that has that going for it. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can kind of start getting into spoilers. Like overall, I liked it overall.
Yeah.
I did. But I told my wife, I'm like, you didn't miss anything. Like, you know, I went by myself. I was like, you didn't miss anything. I would like to watch it again. And something else I thought about was Shane Black. I'm trying to think of a movie he's written that is like this, and I can't think of any, because normally it's like a buddy situation.
Yeah, with
this is an ensemble,
Yeah.
and it you know, the balance wasn't there. It felt like too many balls were in the air at once.
If they had pared the group down to just two at some point midway through the movie and made it really clear what your group was.
Yeah, because the humor from the group, they weren't good enough on their own. You know what I mean? Like, he had to kind of, him and Frank Deckard, sorry, they had to build out Fred Deckard. They had to build out each of these characters and have personalities and think about writing them and probably do different character passes on the script. And spending all that time between all those characters would have been maybe better spending that time on just two of the characters, you know, based on what Shane Black typically does with his scripts, with his two leads. That he typically has.
Yeah, because if you had just made like the leads, like, you know, the main guy and Olivia Munn, and these other characters just like,
and they had a great relationship, that would have been.
But then the way it is, you have these ensemble characters, and you kind of figure out at one point, like, oh, okay, these are the mains.
Yeah.
But you know, without spoiling who those are, it's just I feel like there's a lot more they could have done. And like I said, I'm fine with them departing from what the Predator formula had been before.
They had to, I think,
because there's only so much mileage you can get out of that. And like, what could you do that Predators, put them in the woods again or in the jungle? That's already been done twice before, you know, excluding the Aliens vs. Predators. You already had Predator and Predators, or people in the jungle. Military dudes with big guns and stuff. You already done that. And you done them in the city environment. So the suburbs, like, oh, that's the next logical place. And they do have some jungle stuff, and they do have some like outdoorsy stuff, but to me it's just like there's enough elements that like it was okay, but just nothing to me stood out and made it like a must recommend or like a movie that I'm definitely going to rewatch again.
Yeah, I don't think you have to rush to the theaters to do this. And even sometimes if I like a movie a lot and I want there to be a sequel, or I'm dying for it, I want there to be a sequel to this. I do. But I'm not dying for a sequel enough to tell people you have to go see this in theaters.
Yeah, I just feel like I think like a big problem that Alien versus Predators movies had was they made the Predators seem so incompetent or easily dispatched because the aliens are so easily able to kill them. And I think that when you make this movie, they did establish a Predator that looks really hard to kill. But I think that if you make the Predators kind of easy to dispatch at some point, then the movies kind of lose their point.
Turns into Aliens.
Yeah, I mean,
not that it lost its point, but easily dispatched. You know, you don't want a bunch of Predators where they're just shooting at one shot and they're dead.
Yeah, because Alien was the terror of one creature. Aliens was a swarm of creatures, and almost like, you know, like the Queen Alien and some like ant colony or beehive or something. But like with the Predator, it just I was okay, right? Like I was fine with changes to it and stuff. It just, to me, it didn't do enough to make it worth it. And you have all the external controversy I didn't think about too much until after I watched the movie. But leaving the movie, I didn't come out like uplifted or super excited. It wasn't a bad movie. I don't know it's necessarily like a worse movie than like Predator 2. You know, in terms of just like performances and script and stuff. To me, it just wasn't a movie that left me with any huge impression. Because easily, like it should have easily stood up and been like second best behind the original, with the talent involved and what they were doing and the money involved and stuff. And it just feels like it didn't. So to me, it's like a letdown.
Yeah, I keep hearing, I don't know for sure, people are like, oh, studios was, you know.
I heard that they meddled with the original ideas and scripts.
Yeah, and then the edit and stuff. Who knows? Regardless, all we can judge it on is how the script turned out, or how the film turned out, you know?
Yeah, it just feels like I said, it cut a lot of corners. The original Predator felt like such a tight film.
Yes.
That there was nothing in it. This movie feels like there's some gaps.
Yes.
And it becomes very apparent you're watching it.
It's a bigger film. They got a lot more going on. You know, there's a lot happening between multiple, cross-cutting between multiple missions, I guess, between different characters and what they're doing. So it's a lot to balance.
It feels like they might have cut like 20 minutes to just like little interstitial scenes that flesh out some of those gaps we're talking about.
I would be very interested to see what ends up on a
special edition. Yeah. But so giving it a score out of 10, like what would you give it out of 10?
When I walked out, and I hadn't really thought about it much since then, I was thinking like 6 or 7, maybe, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say like for me, it's like 5.5.
Yeah.
because it's, like, to me, like, anything that's above like a 4 is watchable and enjoyable. And then it's just like my favorite movies go between like 8 and 10, and just stuff that's like I can recommend it. You go like 7 to 5 in the area, and then below that, like, so to me it wasn't a knockout or anything. It's not a terrible movie by any means. Just it didn't deliver what it could have. And that's not even saying not being the original Predator, just didn't deliver on the premise. So
yeah, if this would have been its own thing and never, like, it would have felt just as disappointing in some regards. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, okay, this is not the film they wanted to make, it seems like.
Yeah, it seems like they...
And I'm not saying, like, they shouldn't have blame on them. Like, it just didn't turn out probably how they had hoped.
Well, it just feels like they had all these ideas and they just got reined in on all of it.
Yeah.
But,
or they weren't able to manage it as well. You know, who knows? It's tons of factors. Yeah,
so now we'll move into spoilers. So if you haven't seen The Predator, you can duck out now because we will get into all the plot points and discuss all the story stuff. So you can duck out now if you haven't watched it and want to. So be warned, we're now doing full spoilers. So the main part to me is if the entire idea is that the initial Predator was kind of a rogue predator that broke away from their general group and stole some technology that humans could use to fight back effectively, and defected and took it and went on the run to deliver it to Earth. And
Edward James Olmos, right?
Well, that was a plot that got cut.
Show up.
he was like somebody in the organization that Sterling K. Brown's character worked in, like the kind of secretive group that was trying to keep all the Predator tech and stuff. He was like an upper level person above him that had communicated with the Predator somehow and had, convinced him to bring this technology to Earth, which makes a lot more sense. But then so the Predator stole this technology and brought it to Earth to give to humans. But then it gets to Earth and it's, being attacked by another Predator ship and it barely gets there. The Predator gets out in the escape pod or whatever, but then immediately kills and skins the first humans they come into contact with. That seems to run contrary to their idea that the Predator was wanting to help humanity by then immediately killing humans.
Now, I mean, we never saw his first conflict. Maybe they pointed their guns at him and he knew there was a threat and he was like trying to skin them to scare away the other ones,
I don't know.
And maybe he doesn't care about individual humans.
Just didn't want their goal to...
He doesn't, want to wipe out humanity in regard. You know what I mean? Like... Yeah, maybe if he's a hunter, he doesn't care that much.
Well, it could still be like, I don't really care about humans, but I don't want us to move planets and to do this plan.
Or he just knows, like, hey, a couple lives lost for the greater good, but then, who knows?
But then, too, like, when the Predator gets taken into that facility and Olivia Munn's, like, examining him, and then the Predator, like, wakes up and escapes, which you knew was going to happen, kills a lot of people, but doesn't kill Olivia Munn because she's unarmed and just, like, cowering over in the corner. So maybe,
that's when your first inclination of like, okay, he's got a motive.
Well, we do remember the original Predator. They didn't like to kill unarmed creatures. Yeah. But the other thing, too, though, is this movie with reckless abandon, people just kill other people without really any thought process going into it. And that's something to me that, like, bugged me or just didn't sit right. Because in the original Predator, they were killing these people that were, like, terrorist organizations that were, bad people, theoretically. Now, there's, whatever the politics of that is.
Yes.
In the original Predator, you knew this was a special ops group that was coming in to do something good against people who were inherently bad.
Good. In their mind, good intentions.
So, maybe it's, a fast just look at things. It's just saying, like, that's what the script laid out, and that's what you had laid out. On this, the organization that captures the Predators, you really don't know how good or bad they are, because the Olivia Munn's character, they tell her later, it's like, oh, we brought you with this because they would have killed you.
Yeah.
Because she had taken a vial of, like, some of their DNA or something.
Yeah, it's just all the, it's kill. I guess some of it's kill or be killed, but sometimes it seems like...
They didn't really lay out the stakes of it too much.
It just seems like sometimes you can maybe just get by with not killing some of the other human people, And again, are they just employees? Like, are they doing their job and not really know the motives and, like, what is going on? And it's a lot of people getting shredded.
And a troop that had PTSD and tried to commit suicide, then just with reckless abandon killing all kinds of other people, seems a little bit
it's some of that seemed weird. And two, so the main kid,
Jacob Tremblay,
has
he's on the spectrum.
He's on the spectrum. So they make a joke too about oh, your son's retarded or something, and somebody gets called out for it. But
somebody says the R word, and they said, "Oh, don't say that. His son is."
Yes, yeah, like maybe it's just pointing out like, oh, somebody's ignorance, about people being on the spectrum. But the whole thing with him being on the spectrum is again very coincidental. Yeah. Of him being the new leader or whatever, like. So basically, what was that about?
So the shipment with the Predator mask and the gauntlet gets sent to the P.O. box, which is full and has been paid. So they take it back, I guess, to the shipping address that was like associated with that account, which was the house of his ex-wife or his estranged wife and child. The kid opens the box and I guess thinks it's a toy or something or a video game system and starts playing with it and is able to figure out the Predator language pretty easily because he is autistic. So I do think that things like that run the risk of making everyone think that everyone that's autistic is the Rain Man and can figure out complex mathematical equations. And
the Predators, do they think he's like the chosen one? And I'm saying the coincidence, is it just because they knew that maybe because he did that?
So I think that the big Predator, when he was wanting to take the kid, that was coincidental. His entire mission was to stop the rogue Predator with the technology so it did not get to the humans. And then during the course of that, found this human kid that was able to quickly decode their language and thought that he was an important enough piece of DNA to take back to examine.
Got it.
So that's what
they kind of set that up with Olivia Munn being like, oh, they think this is the next step in evolution.
Yeah, so that was coincidental, and that to me was fine. They didn't come there with the mission of getting this kid because they would have no way to know.
Yeah.
So that was just coincidental to the mission. I think if the kid wasn't anything special, the Predators would have killed everybody and left. Or just left. But so you have like those elements, and then like the group, and they're able to steal like the RV. I'm like, where the hell does RV come from? I was like, is that his RV? Was it in their driveway?
I assume it was his, but
then they steal a helicopter.
Yeah, which I meant to look that up because this is supposed to take place in Tennessee, right?
I don't remember.
Was it Chattanooga?
It was driving distance from like to Virginia, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Because some stupid continuity thing. I think TV stations west of, I don't know if it's Mississippi or what, their call signs are with a K. Yeah. And this had a K on the chopper, which would have been like California or wherever.
Yeah, it's probably just.
And then here is like W, whatever,
Yeah.
But yeah, like just a lot of this is just happening now. And then the Predator dog just playing fetch. Okay, now the dog's our friend because we lobotomized it.
Yeah.
Like there was
just a ton of sense. Well, so that dog, so when the kid ran out in that field, there was like the pit bull or the bulldog or whatever. Was it a pit bull?
I think so.
Or
bulldog.
A bulldog, whatever. There's a dog out in the field and you see the kid and you think like, oh man, they're going to kill the dog. And the dog just like is not in it, and then like later you see it running.
It looks like the dog's going to be running for their RV or whatever, and they were going to let it in, and they never cut to another shot, and the dog's just like, okay, I guess he just saw the dog running and that was it. Maybe they just want to show that the dog lived. Maybe that was the function of that.
It seems like they just cut some stuff out.
It did.
There's a lot of choppy editing that hurt it.
It does, but yeah, it's, again, I had fun with some of the action, some of the character stuff. Not all the humor lands perfectly. It's fine and serviceable because I like the cast a lot. But it just, I don't know. It definitely feels like they were so boxed in, and maybe playing in a strict genre film like this is not going to be Shane Black's strength. I feel even like Iron Man, like he had him out of the suit because he didn't want to have a guy in a suit the whole time. You know what I mean? And with the Mandarin and stuff, like he bent those rules, and some of us were hoping that he was going to bend those with this film. Yeah. But it's almost like when they made, it's not as straightforward, but when we thought we were going to get a whole new Blair Witch film. Yeah. And it was like, okay, wait, they made just kind of another Blair Witch film. Granted, this does a lot of different things, but at the same time, it's more boxed in than I was hoping for it to be.
Yeah. So I think that, like I said, a lot of the story elements, like the subplot with the Edward James Olmos character, feels like that would have made it make more sense if there was communication between a human and a predator, and there was like a rogue predator that didn't really believe in what they were doing. Like that makes more sense, and I'm fine with that. It just feels like they cut enough stuff out that it made the plot somewhat hard to follow. At the end of the day, you don't need to follow it to know predator kills people, people kill people, they want to save the kid, and that's it. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's enough of the plot there to get, but there's just like a lot of this stuff that was going on within it. Once they revealed that the predator had like a humanitarian mission almost.
Yeah.
I was like, so why did they kill all these people? They didn't have to. And then like when the Predator caught up with like the main character, like with in the main characters in that school, it like wasn't killing them. It just wanted the technology. Like it's all communication. If the Predator just communicated, here's what I'm here for, then they would have not been fighting, and they would have just went off and hid with the Predator and helped it or something. But that's how these movies work. It just to me, it just felt like there was so much missing. It just didn't hang together as a coherent, super enjoyable experience. It feels like if the movie was 20 minutes longer, it might have been better.
Yeah, really.
And or 30,
because it was under 2 hours.
It was like an hour and 40 something minutes. If 20 extra minutes were tacked on, I think it would have been a better movie if they had fleshed out some more of these subplots.
Yeah, I have to think that Shane Black and Fred Dekker are probably massively disappointed in how this film ended up.
Well,
I have to think they're
like
just,
the ending that they reshot a lot of it. Like, I'm interested to see what the original footage was that didn't test well. And, so the movie ends with they find out that the Predator actually jettisoned like a life shuttle that has the actual technology in it, so it wasn't destroyed. And then they're able to get it. And then the kid has been working on it, and they open it up.
Which just seemed weird.
And at first, I was like, this looks like the black goo from Prometheus. Is this like a xenomorph thing? But then it's like this biological, technological weapon that covers this guy in predator-looking armor that I guess that they'll use to fight predators when they come to Earth in the future. But to me, that seems like an individual weapon seems like a less likely thing that would help them stop an entire race of creatures if they decided to do something.
It would have been better if, he says something like, that's my new suit. I hope it comes in 42 long.
Yeah.
It would have been better if Schwarzenegger walked up and said, actually, it's my new suit.
Well, like they said that, like, I think part of the original thing was that Arnold would show up at the end in a chopper and like, you need to come with me. And that's essentially what he would have been doing in the movie.
Yeah.
So I get why he didn't want to.
They also say get to the chopper.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that because then I looked like, I don't know if I like didn't see what they were doing or I looked down for a second to maybe grab my drink, but then they're on motorcycles.
Yeah.
And I like that stupid gag.
There's also the reversal of in the original Predator, Arnold tells the Predator, "You're one ugly motherfucker," and in this movie, Olivia Munn's character tells it, "You're one beautiful motherfucker."
Yeah,
when she's in the lab, and Jake Busey shows up. Assuming his character's supposed to be the son of his.
There was something else they say in the lab too. I think that is a callback. I can't remember, but yeah, there's a couple like fun callbacks, but
because they have some of the equipment in the lab from the original movie in the Predator 2, so there's like some callback stuff to it, which to me was fine. It just feels like the movie wasn't focused enough or just didn't give you enough backstory and didn't lay out the stakes really of, so the government agency that deals with predators, do they kill everyone that comes into contact with them? Do they just try to silence them? Like, what do they do? Because otherwise, it's a U.S. government soldier who just immediately decides to kill another branch of the armed services so freely. Stuff like that to me didn't make a ton of sense. And the nice guys, when it's like clearly a criminal organization and there's big fights going on, then there's not as much confusion, or like Iron Man when it's like this bad guys group of people. But like in this movie,
and then even nice guys, when somebody gets killed in that movie, like it is sometimes
meaningful,
gruesome, or like darkly funny in a like horrifying way. Like some of the deaths in that are like horrifying and they give you some sort of emotion.
Yeah.
This is just people getting mowed down.
Well, then like then the other problem, I guess, like as we're kind of wrapping this up, so the main group of people that you follow, in the first Predator movie, they all got picked off one by one until it was one character. So in this movie, well, two characters, because the one woman they had that they had saved or whatever. But in this movie, your main group, they lived really long into the movie. I was like, this is the end of the third. This is the third act, and they're all still alive.
Yeah.
This is kind of surprising. I didn't know it was going to be this, precious with its characters, and then it started killing them off, and then like the Tom Jane and Michael Key characters killed each other, like when they both got impaled and then just shot each other so they wouldn't suffer. Like that was like a darkly comedic moment.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Tom Jane's. Did he get cured of his Tourette's? Did he have that because of PTSD? Because I feel like he lost it.
I don't remember.
And did it feel like because he got his, I don't know, kind of maybe overcame something? Yeah, it all kind of moves fast. And it's like the Tourette stuff, sometimes I'm like, is that okay?
First off, that's not, from what I've read and what I've heard and seen, Tourette's typically doesn't present in that way. It's more like non-word vocal tics and physical tics, not people just spouting out curse words.
So I don't know. Yeah, but I don't know how I felt all about that. Some of the stuff was fine, but Tom Jane did a good job with what he was given. But everybody just felt like you got a glimpse of him. Yeah. It's like you got less character moments out of all these characters than you would in a 30-minute TV show, it seems like.
Yeah,
if they would have been in that.
And then they all got, so they got deaths that were on screen. And then the Sterling K. Brown character dies when you in a blink and you'll miss it moment where most people, even reviewers, didn't realize it until he just never showed up again.
Yeah.
And then when they're actually on the ship, the other soldiers, the guy with the long hair gets like his legs cut off and falls off and you never see from him again. Oh, Alfie Allen, the guy that was Theon Greyjoy from Game of Thrones in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
his arm gets cut off and you never see anything else. Did he die?
That's true. Yeah.
Is he just armless? Like
he screams and
so you don't
assume,
really.
I guess you assume he dies.
And then so you just kind of get these unglamorous, because the first Predator did a great job of giving you a memorable death for most of the characters. Carl Weathers' arm getting shot off and stuff like that. But this movie didn't really do that for the most part, which that's fine. But it just feels like in editing something was lost, because I was having like I said, the fact that one of the main characters who stole all the scenes he was in just disappeared. That's kind of like, or
reshoots and having to realign the ending with maybe what was going on.
Yeah, reshooting it and not reshooting all of like the continuity to keep all this stuff.
And they were like, oh, we can't go do reshoots on a reshoots because it's July and the movie comes out in a couple months. Yeah, and then like the ending when you get the reveal of what the technology was cool, but it's definitely set up for a sequel. Mm-hmm. But if the lead character was a little bit more charismatic. Like the kid, I thought he did a great job with what was given to him. I'm not sure how that rates out by the different organizations that deal with mental health, if they rated it as accurate, inaccurate, offensive. I didn't really know coming out of it what to think. I thought that ultimately the message was that, people that have autism, could be an evolutionary advance, at least in terms of like being able to process things in their minds. He was in Room also.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that I recognized him, which that's a really good movie with Brie Larson.
But so I guess I can kind of wrap up our discussion on it. It's a movie that I don't know, I'm going to revisit too much.
Yeah, I want to watch it one more time to see if I missed anything. I would really like to see some deleted scenes, because I'm like maybe that's going to make the film better. But just
maybe an extended cut.
I would love. I hope Shane Black is oftentimes will be very candid about processes. Yeah. So hopefully here in a couple years, maybe he'll do it right away. I don't know. But if he just decides, no, I don't want to do another Predator because the experience wasn't good, or because they don't want him because of the bad decisions he made, just from a creative standpoint, I'm interested in seeing what were the behind the scenes things with this movie. I would love to see a documentary on the making of this film.
Well, because like with Fox in general, Prometheus had some cut scenes that would have made the movie make a lot more sense to a lot of people that I think would have left a more positive impression, and they cut. So I was like, I don't understand why they cut some of those. Like in Prometheus, there were some scenes with like the engineer and David that had the dialogue that had the subtitles that told you what they're saying. Yeah, make a lot more sense. And they cut that for some reason. So this movie, it feels like they cut stuff that would have made it make more sense. So I don't know what Fox is doing with some of these cuts. Are they just trying to get the runtime down, or what? But it feels like there's stuff like a director's cut could improve this a bit. Yeah. But I don't know if it'll do well enough box office wise.
Not that it's sometimes it's harder to cut out some of these scenes, but because the action scenes. But I would rather less action in this film and more characters. Yeah, because that's what Shane Black does well.
Well, and two, like this group of ragtag soldiers you like killing random, people wearing black outfits with guns who work for this like nebulous agency. There's no stakes there because you don't care about any of the people they're fighting. Yeah. And then these characters you don't get a ton of, like they might be funny, but if they died, you're just kind of like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's just not as much stakes. So it just feels like they could have had less, like you said, less of that and more building up the story. Yeah, they had the character.
Again, they had a lot of balls in the air. They were juggling.
But so that'll wrap up our discussion of The Predator. And if you're listening via iTunes, do us a huge favor, leave a review there. That helps other people find the podcast. If you leave a review, we'll read it on the show, if it's good or bad. Hopefully, if you listen this far, you wouldn't leave a terribly bad review. But yeah, we always enjoy seeing feedback. You can leave us a comment on YouTube. We always enjoy seeing those. You can find all of our social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, all those. You can find the links at houseofvastor.com. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and YouTube for sure, because we'll have a new short film coming out soon, another one shooting in October. So keep an eye out for all of that. And you can find all the work we're doing at houseofvideostore.com. And if you want to find us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Instagram at @TheWilliamCaps.
I'm at Blevin Sean. And we got at HBTVS_official, which did you already say that?
Yeah, check us on Instagram, HBTVS_official, because like on the recent short, I have shared some like pictures and stuff about that. So there'll be some stories and stuff about that. So make sure to follow us on there. But that'll wrap up this episode of the House by Video Store podcast. Thanks for listening.
House by the